Sunday, Fuel Up fam. I know it's Sunday for you. It is actually pre-recorded for me, but I'll probably still be watching it today. So we're gonna get started this week with something that I'm pretty sure, especially if you're in a Southern family, you have had at your grandmother's house, you've had at home, you've brought to a family reunion or a family dinner, something like that. But I feel like this will be great for kids to have a snack midday, especially when school's about to get started. So have a snack midday if you're gonna be schooling at home, or to have a great breakfast option, and you're gonna have some hidden veggies in there too. So win-win, it's gonna be delicious. We're gonna have a good time. Let's get started with our zucchini bread. Got all my ingredients out here on the counter. I'm gonna go through very quickly all of our ingredients and what we're gonna be working with, but it's not just gonna be your typical zucchini bread that we all know and love. That is a delicious one and we love it, but I'm actually gonna add apples into it too. So it's gonna be kind of like your seasonal zucchini bread, if you will. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited for fall, and I love all things fall and all things fall flavored and scents. There's pumpkin candles in my house right now. Not ashamed at all. But this is gonna be kind of a seasonal zucchini bread. So let's go through all of our ingredients and then we'll start the whole process of how to cook this delicious bread. And it's gonna make your house smell amazing. All right, so what do we got here? I'm gonna make this bread very health conscious. So I'm not gonna be using any white flour. I'm actually gonna use some almond flour, and then I'm also gonna use some tapioca flour. I've got a cheesecloth here. You'll know what that's for here in just a bit. I've got some coconut milk. Now, I recommend that you get the canned full fat coconut milk, but I forgot that at the store, so we're gonna make do with this. It'll be perfectly fine, but would rather have it be a little bit more thick with the canned full fat coconut milk. We've got some apples. I don't know exactly how many apples I'm gonna use just yet, but I've got 3 out, and these are actually organic Gala apples. I've got 1 zucchini here, and then I also already shredded up a couple of small ones. So we're gonna finish doing that, but I wanted to show you kind of what it's gonna be looking like. We've got some vanilla extract, allspice, cinnamon, coconut oil, which we're actually gonna melt to put into our bread. I've got a little bit of sea salt. That's a big one, but we're actually only gonna use a little bit. Some baking soda, and we have some eggs. And all we're gonna need is our baking pan outside of that. So that is all of our ingredients. Let's get this bread whipped up. So I also forgot to show you my pan. This is a Wilton. My grandmother told me always that Wilton was the best pans, and you should have nothing but Wilton. So that's what I have, and you can get these at Walmart. They're super cheap. I think also not Sam's, like Hobby Lobby, I think, actually carries these randomly enough, but I think you can get them there. But they're really, really cheap. They're inexpensive, like $15 at the most, I think, to get these pans. I have multiple. I'm gonna start with this one because it makes 4. I do have some larger bread pans as well, but I like to do them smaller so that I can actually give them away. And then they're good to just slice in smaller slices. So I'm gonna use that one. I may use more depending on how much I'm actually gonna make, but we'll see how the batter goes. And we'll just make all the zucchini bread for the entire neighborhood. Here we go. Now, one thing you never forget when you're baking, have your coffee ready to go, already brewed, so that when this bread is done, you can enjoy a slice of this delicious bread with some delicious coffee. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm actually gonna go ahead and grate my zucchini and dice the apples before I do anything. And I'll show you why I'm gonna do that. So like I told you a minute ago, in the introduction to the video, I already shredded up, I think it was 3 zucchini. They were very small. They were actually smaller than this one. So it was 2 or 3, I can't remember exactly. And I'm just gonna do the other one. Now, I have this grater, and it's actually kind of thick grates, and that's what I wanted. You can do them smaller if you want to, but I recommend them to do them just a little bit bigger. So I'm just gonna take this, hold it down into my bowl, and I'm gonna scrape down, for lack of better description, and grate this entire zucchini. And then I've got my cheesecloth over there, I can't get my words out, and I'm gonna take that and squeeze as much juice out of the zucchini as I can, because I want this to be dry. And if you don't do that, your bread is gonna be very soupy and it's gonna take it a lot longer to bake. So we don't wanna do that. You wanna make sure you get as much moisture as you possibly can off. And then sit it aside, maybe put just a little bit of salt on it so it can kind of dry itself out a little bit. And we'll sit it aside while we mix everything else up together. Okay friends, we are gonna go ahead since our zucchini is all shredded down. Now if you ever have zucchini in the fridge, like I love zucchini, and my stomach's been kind of weird over the past few months, so I've had to be very picky about the type of vegetable that I actually eat within my diet. And so zucchini has been one of the ones that's been the best on my stomach. Now I know that's different for everybody, but for me, I buy a lot of zucchini and sometimes it goes bad before I can actually fix all of it. So if that ever happens, which it happens a pretty good bit because I buy a ton of it, I'll make zucchini bread. And sometimes I just buy extra just because I want to make zucchini bread. So making my grandmother happy here. So I'm going to take all of this, and I may have to do it in small batches because I don't need all of this zucchini. So I'll probably save some of it and maybe do like zucchini bread pancakes. Delicious. If you've never had a zucchini pancake, you ain't living. You're just not living. You basically do them just like you would bread, but instead you make them into pancakes. And they're delicious, kind of like you would do banana bread. So all I'm doing is taking this and I'm gonna put it together, kind of like this. It's gonna be, this one's, I'm almost out of my cheesecloth, so I'm having a little bit of a hard time keeping it all in there, but I'm gonna do my best. And all I'm gonna do is take it and I'm gonna twist until I get all the juice out in the sink, get as much juice as I possibly can, use all the muscles that you got, every single one of them, and really grind it to make sure that you get all the juice off, and then we'll put it in the bowl. So I've got 3 apples here. These are small organic Gala apples. You can use Pink Ladies, you can use Fuji apples, whatever you prefer or whatever you have on hand. It doesn't have to be a specific type of apple. We just prefer and really enjoy Gala apples. So that's what we have. And if you've followed along a little bit, you know that we've been doing this subscription box, and I'm not sponsored by them. I don't get paid by them or anything. It's just something that we really enjoy. So last week I talked about our Misfits Market box. Such a good investment, y'all. So good. And you get so many things from it. This week, I don't know if you can see all these fruits and vegetables on the back counter here. This is all that we got in our box this week. Super awesome, and I really love it. Maybe closer to the end of this video, I'll show you what we got this week, just for an extra kicks and giggles, but super cool. I do have a little discount code I can offer you. It's not anything that I get paid with, it's just sharing the love. So if you are interested in that box, I'll give that to you here in just a little bit. So what I'm doing now is I'm just slicing the apples and making sure that I get the core and all of the seeds out, because I don't want any of that. By the way, if y'all hear any like really loud random noises, it could be Turner, it could be Trent, but it's actually our dishwasher. Trent decided that we needed to wash dishes right before we start doing this, but it's okay. This is real life, right? Life is not always glamorous and it's not always perfect, so I'm not gonna worry too much about it. So I'm gonna slice all of these up and then I'm actually gonna dice them. So let's get them sliced up first and then we'll get to dicing. We've got everything sliced up really well. I'm gonna start dicing. Now I want these to be pretty small. So I've sliced this half of the apple. I'm gonna use this as a little example first. And they're kind of chunky. I mean, not super, but they're kind of just like regular slices. So I want to actually take these and I'm gonna take a slice and I'm gonna cut it in half. So that's one slice and I just cut it in half, and then I'm gonna dice all the way down each individual apple. Yes, this is gonna take a little bit of time, and don't speed because your fingers will not appreciate that. Slicing fingers is not fun, so we don't wanna do that. So just take your time, slowly but surely, slice these apples very gently, and it'll all come together perfect. Okay, y'all, I've got just that first little sliced apple put together, or half of the apple put together. And I just want to show you kind of how small. You want them to be finely diced. So you want them to be kind of tiny, kind of small. And I may even dice these a little bit more, but I think that having these kind of small but kind of larger little chunks in there will be really good and a little surprise when you bite into your apple. Or not into your apple, but into your slice of bread. So I'm gonna leave them that way, but I'm gonna finish dicing up this entire little stash of 3 apples, and then we'll go on to our dry ingredients now. Here we go. So moving on, I got my apples all diced up. You can see they're very, very tiny little chunks. That's what I'm working with. Then I'll put those in a separate small bowl, and I lost one. And then I also put my zucchini in a separate small bowl. So I'm gonna take these and kind of set those aside out of the way. And I didn't use all 3 apples like I thought I was going to. So I'm gonna save the rest of these and use them for snacks later in the week. So I'm gonna move this over. Start working on our actual maybe batter. So first thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and set my oven to 350. That's what we wanna do first. And let that go ahead and start heating up. So by the time that we get everything mixed together and put together, then hopefully our oven should be ready to go. All right, we're gonna start throwing in all of our dry ingredients first. So the first thing that we're gonna need actually is our flour. So I'm gonna start with the almond flour, and then I'm just gonna lay everything on top. So I'm gonna do 1.5. See if I can dig down in here. There we go. So I've got 1, that's a 1/2 cup. That's 1 cup, and then I just need 1 more. I'm getting it everywhere. There we go. Perfect. And then I'm gonna go to, that was almond flour. Now I'm gonna go to the tapioca flour. Now I want you to keep in mind with this tapioca flour, it's kind of like powdered sugar. Not the taste or anything, just the way that, you know how when you open powdered sugar, it literally looks like a bomb went off and it goes everywhere? Yeah, that's what tapioca flour is kind of like. I'm only gonna use 3 tablespoons of this. Not a ton, just a little bit, but it does go everywhere. So just be aware when you start to pack it up and get it back out. It's gonna kind of go everywhere. As you can see, my hands are already really gross, but that's just how things go when you're baking, right? Like nothing ever is super clean. If you didn't get it all over the kitchen, then something just tells me you didn't do it right. I don't know. I get stuff everywhere. Every time I cook, every time I bake. But that's just the fun of it. Getting the kitchen messy and cleaning it up. If you tell yourself that it's fun to clean up, then maybe it is a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Hey, now we've got our flours in there, and before I go any further, I'm going to whisk it together just a little bit. Now I didn't record it and I thought I did, but that's okay, it doesn't really matter. You need 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I already put the salt in there. I thought I was recording, but I wasn't, but that's okay. The salt's already in there. Now I'm gonna take 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, and this is actually organic cinnamon. I don't think it matters that much. I think you will truly benefit from using organic, but that is just my preference. So I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon, if I can get it to come out, there we go. 1 tablespoon of that. Smells like Christmas. I mean, let's be honest, this weekend is Christmas in July. We are literally 6 months away from Christmas. I know some people say, I'm not ready for that, it's not time, but we don't need that kind of negativity in our life. You can do Christmas all the time. We literally watched Polar Express last night. If y'all know Trent, you know Trent loves Polar Express. So we watched that last night. That was our thing. All right, now we're gonna whisk all of this together. Oh my goodness, I forgot. I gotta have a teaspoon of baking soda. I get to talking and then I forget what I'm actually doing. A little bit more, there we go. All right, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and that wraps up all of our dry ingredients. So I'm just gonna go ahead and whisk it together. You could also sift it together. I personally don't have a sifter because I don't do a lot of baking. When I do bake, it's things like this, or my grandmother's homemade Amish sourdough bread. We aren't Amish, but if you've ever had Amish bread, so good, so good. So that's the only time I really bake, so I don't really benefit from having one, but if you do a lot of baking, maybe you would. All right, so all of that is all mixed together. Now we're gonna head into all of our dry ingredients. We're gonna put those in a bowl separately, and then we're gonna add them in together. So that's super important. Make sure you do them separately in separate bowls before you add them in together. So the next thing we're going into is our wet ingredients. So I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of coconut oil into a microwave safe bowl, and I'm gonna microwave this to make sure that it melts, because you wanna use melted coconut oil, not room temperature, and that's important so that it kind of goes all in there smooth and it's not in chunks throughout your bread. So let's do that. I'm just gonna add it on about 30 seconds and then I'll check it, and if it needs to go again, I can do it again. I've got another mixing bowl, because remember we wanna do our dry ingredients in a separate bowl as well as our wet ingredients in a separate bowl. And then we'll bring them together in just a bit. Now, I have some sugar-free syrup here, like pancake syrup, and then I also have some molasses. You could also use honey or pure maple syrup or just regular pancake syrup. It really doesn't matter, as long as just some sort of syrup. So let's check our coconut oil. That's good and melted, so I'm just gonna pour this right on into our mixing bowl, just like that. And I'm gonna take 1 cup, and I'm actually gonna mix this, I think. Do I wanna mix this? I think I can mix it, it'll probably be all right. So I'm gonna do, this is just a 1/2 cup measuring cup that I'm actually using. So I'm gonna do 1/2 pancake syrup and then 1/2 of molasses. And this is why we're not using any sugar, because you've got plenty of sugar in your syrup. You don't need any more than that. So this is almost full. I'm gonna add a little bit more of the pancake syrup in. And like I said, you could use honey if you wanted to. It does not have to be molasses or pancake syrup. You could use pure maple syrup, whatever you wanna use. Totally up to you, okay? All right, now that we've got our coconut oil melted and our syrup, honey, whatever you're gonna be using, sugar substitute in there, in our mixing bowl. Now we're gonna add a tablespoon, excuse me, not a tablespoon, a 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. This is actually organic vanilla extract, came from Trader Joe's, if you're wondering. So I'm gonna use a tablespoon and a half, two teaspoons. I can't even talk. Teaspoons, so a 1.5 teaspoons. But I actually use 2 teaspoons because I like a lot of vanilla, but you use whatever you want to use, okay? All right, so we've got that in there. I've got my recipe over here to the side to make sure that I do everything correctly. So I'm gonna whisk this together a little bit, just to kind of mix it together. Now this is a smaller mixing bowl, and I don't want things to just like jump out of my bowl, so I'm gonna be very gently doing this. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add my 4 eggs in another mixing bowl so that I can beat those together before I put them into my wet ingredients here. And then we'll add it together. I know it's using a lot of different mixing bowls, but I promise you it's worth it, and there's a reason for it, okay? Let's start cracking eggs. These are brown organic eggs, but they don't have to be. You could use whatever eggs you have on hand. I just prefer to use these because I think they make, oh my goodness, great scrambled eggs in the morning, and they also make really good cakes and things like that. So I just feel like brown eggs, I don't know, they just do something different. I don't know what it is, but they just do something different, and because they're organic, you know how I feel about that. So we're gonna use those. I'm gonna lightly beat these eggs and then add them into our oil mixture with the syrup and the vanilla. There we go. Gently pour those in. I'll mix this together, and then we're gonna add it into our flour mixture that we've already done. Now I'm gonna very gently, as I whisk this, I'm gonna do it over the top of this because if it actually splashes in, it's okay because it's about to go in there anyway. Cool, now I'm gonna slowly beat as I pour. Make sure I get everything out of there. I don't know about you, but when I'm baking, I make sure I get everything I possibly can out of the bottom. All right, there we go. Mix all of that in. Now the next thing I'm gonna add, might actually need a little bit more flour, but we'll see. Oh my goodness, I just realized I forgot something too. I forgot a little bit of coconut milk. This has about a cup left, and that's really all that I needed. I'm gonna add a little bit of that in, and again, if you need to add more flour, sometimes things come out just right, sometimes they don't. If you need to add more of this or more of that, do what you need to do. It's totally a personal preference. Now I can tell that this needs to have a little bit more water come off of it, so I'm just gonna, that salt really helps to draw all of the moisture out. So I'm gonna squeeze it out one more time, and just in my hands. You can use a cheesecloth again like this if you want to. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I know some people will argue that there is a right or wrong way, but sometimes it's trial and error in the kitchen, and that's what I love about cooking, is it's not always gonna be perfect every time. It's not gonna turn out the way that it did before every time, and guess what? That's okay. It's okay. It doesn't have to. It really doesn't have to. All right, I'm gonna wash all the zucchini off my hands, and I'm gonna mix this up, and I might actually add a little bit more zucchini too if I blend it together and I feel like it needs it. But before I decide that, I'm gonna take my apples now, and I'm gonna throw those in just chunky. I'm gonna add a little at a time, mix it together. Actually, I don't think I'm gonna need more flour, but we'll see. As we get a little deeper into this, we'll see. Depends on really your taste and your preference of if you wanna add a little more zucchini or if you just wanna add whatever's actually what it calls for. That's a preference. Smells so good. Now our oven has already heated up a long time ago, so it's ready to go. Now I'm gonna add the rest of these apples in. Kind of push those down so they'll get good and blended together. And I actually am gonna add probably another half a cup of that almond flour. Or if you wanted to, you could actually add, if you have just regular vanilla protein, you could add a scoop or two of vanilla protein and make it protein zucchini bread. Lots of options, very versatile. You can do whatever you want to do. So trial and error, make it work. Okay, friends, we've got everything ready to go. Our oven's ready, we've got our pan. I'm gonna spray these down. Now, one of the things I would also recommend that you do is use a little bit of parchment paper. Now, I wouldn't put the whole thing down in the whole like sheet of parchment paper that you tear off inside, but maybe just one small strip to go into the center of your pan so that it's easier to just lift it out of the pan, and the center sometimes sticks to the bottom no matter how much you spray it. So to prevent that, even if you have really good pans like this one, to prevent that, just add a little extra layer of parchment paper underneath instead of just spraying, and you're good to go. So here's what I'm actually gonna do. So I just pour off one square sheet, and I'm gonna cut, since this is a 4-loaf pan, I'm gonna cut little slivers like that. And we're gonna use these in the bottom of our pan, and I'll show you kind of what I'm going for. And then that way, it'll be a little bit easier to pull out of your pan once everything is done. So we've got our 4 sheets here. I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna put it right down into my pan on all sides. Let's see. I'm gonna put like let's see, yeah, let's put that side down like that. Sometimes you gotta pour your stuff in there first because it doesn't always want to stay, which is totally fine. But this is kind of what we're going for here, if you can see that, okay? So that once your loaf is done, you can just lift and put it on your drying rack. So if you don't have a drying rack, I recommend you to get one. You can get those at the Dollar Tree if you want to be super cheap. I was super cheap. I got mine at the Dollar Tree. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be one of those really good ones. Recommended to have one of those, but you don't have to have one. And I said, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna get the Dollar Tree one because that's what I have and that's what my grandmother always used too. So, all right, now I'm gonna spray the pan. I'm gonna put these sheets down in there and we're gonna pour our batter in and we're gonna get to bake it. Let's get all of our mixture poured in. I'm just using a measuring cup just to pour it in there because it does get kind of messy, and if you pour the entire loaf just from the actual mixing bowl that you're putting everything together in, is going to be kind of messy. So don't do that, or I recommend don't doing that. So we've got everything in there poured in. Now I always like to take a kitchen towel or a paper towel, something like that, which actually, yeah, a paper towel might do a little bit better. I go around the edges and make sure that there's not, especially on these little paper, make sure there's not any little pieces that are gonna be like extra messy or cause your pan to burn, because sometimes if you drop certain little particles of your mixture on your pan, it will burn, even if it's a good pan like this. So make sure you try not to do that. So I like to clean everything up so it looks really nice. And there it is. We're gonna pop this into the oven at 350 degrees for about 50 to 60 minutes. I'm gonna check it at about 45 minutes to make sure that it's doing well, but you want it to be nice and golden brown on top before you pull it out of the oven. And if you take a toothpick, poke it into the center and pull it out. If there's still some batter on your toothpick, then it's not quite done yet. Pop it back in, leave it in for another few minutes, and then check it again. Now, if you do stick your toothpick in there and it comes out clean, then you're probably done and ready to go. Another reason I like to use these smaller loaves is if I'm giving these to somebody, I usually keep one for myself for two reasons. But for the first reason is I want to slice it and see if it's done. And if it's done, then I'm good. If I don't have one that I can kind of test, then I'm not 100% sure. So that's kind of how I do it. I'm gonna sift these around, pop them in the oven for 50 to 60 minutes, and I'll be back to check with you and we'll see what they're looking like. So as promised, we got the bread in the oven. It's gonna be in there for another 30 minutes. So working on that, excuse me. But I promised you that I would show you what we got in our Misfits box. I always say it backwards this week. So we got two pretty large, actually, acorn squash. Love those. We got 2 beets. Trent will be juicing with those. 2 really good size ginger roots. So we're gonna be using those for juicing. I only got 2 of the butternut squash. One of them I actually got last week. We got 2 of the cucumbers. The zucchini I actually used for the bread. I got those this week too. We got 6 tangerines. We got 4 Florida oranges and 6, I think these are, yes, pink lady apples. This acorn squash is actually from last week, so I'm gonna be cooking lots of squash this week. And then we got, those are from last week, the lemons are from last week, and then the apples are from last week. And then the apples that I actually used today for the bread. Those came in our box from last week, but y'all, this stuff is so good. It's so good, and it lasts a really long time. As you can see, pretty big box. We get the Madness box, and I just keep harping on it, and I keep talking about it because it's such a good investment. And it's $35 for the Madness box. It delivers straight to our door on the day that we choose, and we always choose a day that we're home so that we can get it off the porch and get it inside and wash it all off, but always super worth it. So there's our Misfits Market box. All right, y'all, it's all done. It looks so good. Look at this beautiful golden brown on the top. That's what we want. So remember, I put these little pieces of parchment paper down, and I'm just gonna take this and very gently, oh, one thing I forgot, our little rack. So we've got our little cooling rack. I'm gonna put this on top of my cutting board here, and I'm just gonna very gently take my knife, or you can use the end of a spoon or fork or anything, just kind of scrape the edges around just to make sure that everything's pulled apart and it's not gonna be stuck to the sides or anything like that, because we wanna pull it out, but we don't wanna pull it apart. I'm gonna very gently lift these up, and look at that, so easy. I'm gonna sit it right on top of my cooling rack, and I'm gonna do the same thing for these two. We'll let them cool for probably about 30 minutes or so, just to make sure they're good and cool before you wrap them up in plastic wrap or anything if you're gonna give these away. And they'll be delicious. I think me and Trent might actually cut into one of these in a little bit. I don't know what you think, but I'm gonna cut into this. But it smells good, doesn't it?
It does smell good.
It smells delicious. So there they are, friends. Look how beautiful. I mean, they look like they have wings, but they're cooked to perfection. They're really golden brown and they're really hot. But that is our apple cinnamon zucchini bread. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you try it. If you do, please let me know. I would love to see your zucchini bread, who you're giving it to, what you're making it for, or what you do with it. I'll tell you something else that this is really good for: if you make French toast with it. That might be what we do later tonight. I don't know about y'all, but we get the munchies a lot. So enjoy this recipe. Please let me know if you try it. You can use our hashtag FuelUpWellness or hashtag TheWeeklyFuelUp, or you can tag us at Madison_FuelUpWellness. Put a little @ before that to make sure that I get it and I see it, because I love to see it. And if you have any questions, let us know. You can leave a comment, or you can send us a message on our Facebook page or our Instagram handle. So I hope you enjoy this recipe. Yet again, I know I've said that like 3 or 4 times. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great Sunday. God bless and fuel up. We'll talk to you soon.